I guess this is a good lesson for me because I always tell my students that they don't have to fill the silence in with their noise.
Which is especially difficult for us extroverts who just feel very ill at ease when it's that quiet. All right, so we are currently streaming live. So we'll get started. We've turned off the waiting room, so we should have people be able to come in and not constantly be interrupting while we're working today. But welcome everybody to eConference number 10. We've made it to double digits. This is very exciting. As always, if this is your first time to one of the eConferences, when we're asking questions or trying to interact during presentations, feel free to utilize the chat and the participants window where you can digitally raise your hand and we can see that and it'll queue up perfectly. We've got a nice packed schedule today. We're going to start off first with a good friend of mine, Byrne from Orlando. He's a space reporter and as big a space nerd as any of us in this room, which is saying something. So we get to spend an hour with him and sort of go over any questions you may have about working with the media, and of course a little bit about Brendan's background and sort of what he does in Central Florida, and if they let him go, I guess, to French Guiana for James Webb. We'll see. Probably not. Probably. We've got long German words of the week again with Anna Green. This time we've got one of these words is going to blow you away. It is 63 letters long, but most importantly, Long German Words of the Week is going to introduce a co-host in that segment. It is Anna's partner, Brian, who is a native German and who had difficulty with at least two of the words. So that should tell you how good they'll be today. Then we've got only one. But it was the last one, so that's the one that counts. We've got a new segment today with Jackie Baughman from Buffalo. It's called the Artist Corner, kind of giving you a little peek into some of the tutorials that we're going to be putting together, primarily based on Illustrator and Photoshop, on how to incorporate those into show content creation and things of that sort. Mary Holt, whenever she makes it here, she's in the room, never mind. Hey, Mary, where are you? There you are, at the bottom of my screen. Mary's got her podcast segment again. And so, Brendan, we have one of our planetarians who every week gives us a rundown of the podcasts that we should be listening to for the week. We may or may not have a special podcast in there today. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll have open forum again at the end. And because it's Friday, it is best parts of the week. So come prepared for the best parts of your week to share with everyone as we head into the weekend. I don't think we have any important announcements. Hospitality Suite went well last night. So we'll just jump right in. Now I get to give the appropriate introduction for Brendan. Brendan Byrne is WMFE's space reporter and contributor to NPR's national programming. He also hosts WMFE's newest program, Are We There Yet?, a radio show and podcast focusing on human space exploration. His work appears locally on WMFE and its sister station, WMFE, statewide in Florida through a partnership of more than a dozen of those Floridian radio stations, and is also heard nationally on NPR and the BBC. Byrne is a graduate of the University of Central Florida, so go Knights. And of course, you can follow Brendan on Twitter at SpaceBrendan or his beard at ByrneBeard. So without further ado, howdy, Space Nerd. Everybody, this is...
Thanks for having me, Mike.
So you knew you were gonna get a fantastic introduction today. So Brendan and I have known each other for a couple of years, worked on a number of stories together. I've been a guest on his podcast before. So we go back quite a ways. He is my bearded brother from another mother. Probably the only one who comes close in resplendency. But enough about our beards, and let's get to what Brendan does better than just about anybody else, I think, and that is reporting on space exploration. And so one of the things, of course, living in Central Florida is that the proximity to Kennedy Space Center and really the epicenter of exploration of our solar system, the future of crewed space flight, all of that really is happening front and center there. at Cape Canaveral. And so, Brendan, wanted to turn it over to you for a little bit, kind of give us a background of how you came to be a space reporter, sort of what your role is at WMFE and for NPR and putting those things together, and sort of like where you see this this part of the industry going.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks, Mike. And before we begin, I do have to apologize for Byrne's beard. I did not get to the barber before this whole pandemic thing happened, and I desperately need to get there. So it is shellacked for this video thing, so hopefully it doesn't puff out while I'm talking and distract everyone. So yeah, as Mike said, I'm the space reporter for WMFE, or the public radio station here, and I work closely with NPR, contributing to the science desk about all things space exploration that happens here. And my story is a kind of interesting one as to how I got this job. Much like a lot of the other industries here in Central Florida, the Space Coast, space went flat in 2011 when the space shuttle was retired. WMFE had a full-time space reporter. He had kind of moved on. Some other reporters took over reporting the last few flights of the shuttle program, and then they kind of put space reporting to the wayside. That was before my time. I joined WMFE in about 2013 as a recent political science grad from UCF to help with their election reporting and producing some of their radio shows. And I had just had an interest in the space program, so I picked up some space stories to report on, and got a lot of response. It was it was something that the folks were missing. They forgot about it and wanted to hear more on the radio. So I became the full-time space reporter, and I'll use air quotes because we do 50 other things in public radio. But space reporting became my primary beat for OFT-1, which was Operation Flight Test 1 of NASA's Orion capsule, which was, I think, 2014. I'd have to Google it. I don't even know what day it is today. But since then, we've been kind of focusing on space, and we found that there was this this desire for space news. And my editor at the time said, "Well, who wants to pick up the space beat?" And I raised my hand, and she said, "Well, what's your qualifications?" And I said, "Well, in 5th grade, I went to space camp, and then I was like the most qualified person in the newsroom. So that's how I got my job." And since then, we've been expanding our coverage. It first started with covering space news as it happened. Then it turned into creating a podcast called Are We There Yet? It was just a periodic podcast at the start, maybe one episode every 3 weeks. And then from there, it grew into really becoming a presence and a cornerstone of our reporting. So we call ourselves America's Space Station, and provide a lot of the content for a lot of the public radio stations from what happens here in Florida. So yeah, so that's kind of my story as to how I got to where I was, or to where I am. The last few weeks, I've been off the space beat a bit, covering some economic stuff about COVID-19 in Central Florida, but still kind of keeping up to speed with things. And now the podcast is once a week. It's syndicated. Gets about 50,000 downloads a month, which is something we're proud of, but something we're still trying to build. We know there's more space nerds out there. So that's kind of where I'm at and what I'm doing.
Cool. Well, Brendan, going back, one of the things that we've discussed a lot in our conferences the last couple of weeks, and sort of coming out of the facility closures and working from home and not being able to reach audiences, is that at some point they're going to let us back into the buildings. We're going to start being able to put together new shows and such. And there's a disconnect in a lot of facilities between the fact that we may only be able to have 20 or 30% of our audiences in the building at any one time, and the need to still be able to reach out to audiences in the community and talk to them about things that are happening in space, and sort of the important events and sort of touchstone moments that we have seemingly every year, whether it's in astronomy or in space exploration. So for you, sort of looking ahead as a reporter, for the rest of 2020, what are the big events that are on your radar that the general public are going to get really, really interested behind,
Mhm.
regardless if we're quarantined or we're able to go to our facilities?
I mean, right off the bat, Commercial Crew, the launch of U.S. astronauts for the first time in this country since 2011 is going to be a really, really big deal. And I know this whole coronavirus thing has really kind of taken a lot of the wind out of the sails that NASA was kind of hoping for, that this was going to drum up a lot of public support. As Mike knows, I just got off a press conference, and the administrator, Jim Bridenstine, was really disappointed that this wasn't going to be this, kind of ticker tape flag waving, people lining the shores and, packing the beaches, watching this, much as they would watch the first space shuttle launch or the launch of Apollo 11. It's not going to be like that. In fact, he's, actively discouraging that, which is really difficult for the agency that really has had a tough time getting itself into the public sphere and building that public support that they need. It's getting better, but this was kind of what they were banking on. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. I don't have an audience in the room with me. This is nothing new to me. I've been talking to myself for years, but I can see that how it would be very difficult to have this kind of monumental event and no audience to share it with. But that's definitely one that I'm watching. We've got, like dozens of stories that I haven't written yet that we're planning to get out on the air and segments and whatnot. So that's kind of what we're focusing on right now is Commercial Crew. Now there's some other really cool missions that are happening this year that I've been trying to keep my eye on. The OSIRIS-REx mission is absolutely fascinating to me. I love that mission, and this is the mission. They sent a spacecraft to the asteroid Bennu to collect a sample and then bring it home. So it's the US's first sample return mission. It's not the first sample return mission, but it's the agency, NASA's first one. And there's some big milestones happening this year. I think the sample is being collected this summer. They've just done a test run of it. And they're bringing back some fascinating images of this asteroid. And this asteroid is not what they expected it to be. You might remember some earlier headlines that they got there and they noticed that there were geysers on this thing. It was rockier than they thought. They had a hard time finding a place to find the sample missions. I found that talking to the people that work on this thing has been it's a fascinating story of discovery that's kind of happening in real time. And it's the first kind of story that I've covered from start to, well, I will finish, but I saw this thing in the clean room before it launched and talked to the PI then, and I've been checking in on it ever since then. So there's a really big thing happening there as well. And then SLS is happening sometime. But there are some things happening this year, which are worthy of celebrating and covering, like the Green Run test, which is happening in Michoud. So they're actually going to fire the 4 engines on this bad boy, and that is going to be it'll be a compelling visual, compelling sound, and a compelling story to see this rocket that's been years and years and billions of dollars in the making actually roar to life. So those are kind of the kind of big bullet points I've got my eyes on this year. So Commercial Crew for human space flight. We've got OSIRIS-REx for some really cool planetary science, and then SLS for some kind of long view, kind of flag waving, going back to the moon moments. So that's what's on my list right now.
And then, of course, we do have with Perseverance is supposed to go off net
Oh,
sometime in July.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah, there's
so
like
many good
4
things
Mars
happening.
missions. Yeah, there's 4 Mars missions happening as well. So there's Perseverance. There's another rover. I think another rover got delayed, and then an orbiter. So yeah, it's a transfer window year, and this is going to be a really, really cool. Yeah, totally. Thank you for reminding me. I've got to. I actually have like 10 stories I have to write about that. So yeah.
Yeah, so kind of going back to the having these milestone events that we're not going to have the hundreds of thousands or millions of people to see. I know we have Joanne Young on the call today. Joanne lives in Merritt Island and has lived in Merritt Island for a long time, long enough to have experienced it all. So yeah, I can remember as a kid, and Joanne can attest to this, just like an everyday shuttle launch was like 100,000 people on the Space Coast. And if it was important for any reason at all, like say it was the last one, it was pandemonium. It was 2 million people on the Space Coast for 24 or 36 hours. And now to not have that for commercial crew it's a little disappointing.
Yeah.
Do you think it'll make your job easier not having to deal with that traffic?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I still have to deal with traffic. It's going to be insane. But yeah, it will make my job easier. And I think what's kind of something to keep in mind that, looking at the glass is half full, which is something we rarely do in the news business, is that this is SpaceX that's doing it. I think the amount of effort SpaceX puts into their visuals, their live streams, their video, their photography is more than the agency does. And I think, I'm surprised I'm saying this. I would not have been saying this, 2 or 3 years ago covering SpaceX, but I think that SpaceX has driven NASA to be a little more focused on actually telling the story of these missions. And I'm so happy that it's going to be SpaceX doing this, because I mean, the videographers and the amount of money they put into putting together these packages are incredible. They put out this film a few months ago, I think it was, and it was a recap of the Demo 1. So this was the uncrewed mission to the space station, and they had this almost like IMAX views of the Crew Dragon approaching the space station. And it's just like, I watch, these videos all the time of, orbit or, rendezvousing with the station, these cargo ships, but this one gave me chills with what it was showing. It was just incredible. So I think that we can look at this as, luckily we have an organization that knows the impact of visual storytelling on this historic event, and will provide us some incredible views and some incredible shots and some incredible, and then it's all NASA. So then, then it's ours to use. So I think that that's one thing that we can take from this. If this was just a NASA program, we get some great visuals, but we would not get the stylistic stuff that SpaceX is known for. And before I forget, Joanne, how great is the weather today? It's wonderful down here.
It is perfect.
It's perfect.
And so I just decided to show off today. But I was wondering if there's any way that you and Mike could work together on Dome's dialogue to feature all of these great launches that will be happening. So it's, brought to you by Dome Dialogues. Is it possible?
I mean, we could certainly, I think, Brendan and I can think back to the days when it was like, was it like Miles O'Brien and the rest of the crew would sit under the tents along the where the clock was, and then you just see it in the background. For those of you who've seen Mars 1001, that's kind of the cliche shot. There's a planetarium show where it's Miles O'Brien in there as well. Doing stuff like that would be a lot of fun. I think commercial crew would be a big one. But then also don't tempt me to try to get Brendan to give me a press pass, because that will end badly. Well, that will end with me not coming back.
We are struggling with that right now, because we don't know what the press situation is going to be at the site. Luckily, my organization has what's called a brown badge, which gives us kind of unfettered access. And we've been told as brown badgers, we'll be able to come and go as we please, while maintaining social distancing and all that stuff. But a lot of the other people that have just looked for temporary or event credentials, they don't know if they've got them, if they're coming down. NASA doesn't have their the plan in place yet. So we don't know. It's and then we're struggling with the idea of, does my company risk sending me out there? So we don't even know if I'll be there, which is kind of sucks, because I've been looking forward to this since I took over the beat. But yeah, one thing we do offer though, and I'm happy to share more information, is for major launches and eventually all launches from the Space Coast, we do have a Facebook streaming kind of program we send out. It's called T-0. And it's the stream of the countdown and the launch with some context at the start of it from either myself or another expert. And we are able to cross-post those to Facebook pages. So and we're trying to get that distributed. So if anybody is interested in hosting that for launches, we'll definitely have one for commercial crew. We do them for all the major science missions. And then a lot of times we'll do them for national security missions as well. So if anybody's interested in that, I'm happy to pass along that information. And my part with, we work with a public radio station in Jacksonville, WJCT, that does a lot of live streaming. We got a lot of cool things on the horizon that were kind of put on pause due to coronavirus, but we eventually will do live launch commentaries with it as well. And then anybody who wants to take the feed can just cross post it to their platforms. So there is that on the table if anybody would want it. And I'm sure WJCT would be happy to sign you up for it.
It's long been one of the real aspects of Central Florida media is that every single station has at least one very prominent space reporter. And usually those space reporters have been there for 20 or 25 years. And it's, it's not a niche market. It's, we're going to be launching from the Space Coast essentially for decades to come. And there is, Brendan can talk to this. There's a group of, let's say, much more internet and tech savvy reporters and photographers. The photo behind me was taken by a guy named John Krause. John is 18, 19?
I think he just turned 19.
Just turned 19. He's the youngest credentialed launch photographer ever. And I think at one point he took his prom date out to the beach because it was the same night as one of the rocket launches. And he's got this picture of him and his date with the rocket arcing behind them. And it's just incredible. Mm-hmm. And so it's those kind of people and those kind of resources where, I think everybody's looking for those new outlets. And we're, of course, as planetariums, we're looking for new content, new things to do. And so it's, we'll definitely work with Brendan to try to put that stuff together and get that list of resources out to all of you. And of course, they'll all be super excited to take care of that. There was a point though, like 2.5 years ago, Brendan and a couple of space reporter friends were part of an event that my planetarium was putting together. And I think we had like 6 or 7 of us at a brewery all at the same time, that had any like major news had broken about space, like half of the industry would have been on pause because everybody would have had to whip out their phones and start writing stories and things like that. So you kind of get a sense for the tight knit nature of it all and the people who really tell great stories now. So one of those stories, Brendan, of course, is if we go back 30 or 40 years, this is completely a federal funded thing. It's NASA and NASA alone. And now we're in the age of very real public and private partnerships, especially with SpaceX, but to a lesser extent, what we're looking at with sort of the opening of the next lunar landing vehicle, or, what rocket's going to take Artemis to the moon. Can you speak a little bit to how that transition has occurred and really what we should be expecting in the years to come?
Yeah, so that transition kind of happened due to budgetary concerns. I mean, when we talk about, commercial space hardware is taking people to the moon or whatever, I mean, really commercial space hardware has been NASA forever. NASA's bought commercial space hardware, the Saturn V and the lunar module, all that stuff, that was all built by private contractors. What has changed, and this is kind of what is difficult to convey to the public, and I've had a hard time wrapping my head around this, is that it's the way that it's happening. So in the past, NASA would say, we want a Saturn V rocket and we want it built to this spec, this amount of, has to hold this, has to do that. We want these engines. We want, X amount of this, Y amount of that. And then a company would come back and give them a design. Now, and Commercial Crew is a really good example, is NASA just said, we need something to get 3 astronauts to the International Space Station safely. Give us your thoughts. And there was a bidding process. The first round of Commercial Crew contracts, I think there were like 6 companies that came in. One of the major companies that got snubbed was Sierra Nevada. But it eventually boiled down to SpaceX and Boeing. And NASA didn't say, I want this sleek Crew Dragon with these touchscreen things, whatever. No, that's what SpaceX brought to NASA. So instead of I think of it like you're not going out and buying the car of your dreams. NASA's not going out and saying, I want to get this bright red car with a 8-cylinder engine, Hemi in it, all this stuff. NASA's just calling an Uber and saying, all right, whoever can take me here, I'm going to just get in that car and go. So that's kind of been the difference. There's some nuances in how you want to label it, whether it's a fixed price or cost plus contract, but that's basically what it is. NASA's now a customer. They're not kind of like a project manager anymore. And, we just heard from the administrator today, a reporter asked a question about that. And this is part of cost saving. They don't have to worry about development anymore. They can push the development out to other people and just pay for the service. So Commercial Crew was a $6 billion development program, and they will pay for each individual seat, but it is far cheaper than us trying to develop our own crew vehicle or continue to purchase rides from the Russian Space Agency.
And then, of course, they did just announce this morning that even with Commercial Crew very, very much on the horizon, that there will be an additional Soyuz seat that will be
they're in
exchanged.
negotiations, for October. Right now, we only have one American astronaut on the station, Chris Cassidy. They are extending, so this Commercial Crew mission, it was supposed to be just a quick up and down to prove that it worked. Like I think they were supposed to, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley were supposed to stay up there for a week. They just announced recently, or I just saw that they announced, I could have missed this earlier, that it's going to be an extended mission. So they're going to stay up there for a little bit longer. That was always in the cards. They were training for EVAs and whatnot. But now Chris Cassidy, Bob Behnken, and Doug Hurley will help replace some of the battery packs. I'm sure if you've watched the all-female EVA, that was about the battery packs, and they've been working on this power upgrade for a few months now. So that work is going to continue because of this May 27th launch. There is an operational mission with a few other NASA astronauts, and I cannot remember their names off the top of my head, but I think a Japanese astronaut's also taking the ride on that one. But they just did want Chris Cassidy to be the only astronaut up there because they really do need 2 or 3 U.S. astronauts to keep the research segments going and to do the upgrades that they needed. So that's also why they bought that Soyuz seat, just in case anything goes wrong with this. They might find something on DM2 that makes them not want to put astronauts on there again. And the built-in redundancy they had in this plan was Boeing's Starliner, which we know is now grounded until at least another test flight. So so it's been very interesting to see how this has taken longer than even the stretch goal for NASA. This was supposed, I'd been telling my NPR editor, I'm like, this is the year for Commercial Crew. And it's like back in 2014. And he's like, no, it's not. So it's finally great to see that it's happening, but they are running into a time and resource pinch at this point.
And then, of course, speaking of time and resource crunches, the NASA's starting to talk now about Artemis landers, and in general, Artemis is going to be it'll be a big deal when it happens. We won't get into sort of the politics of trying to make it happen in the sort of time scale that we're looking at now. But there seems to be some serious issues of how do we get to the moon at this point with any of the current launch vehicles that are available, especially with SLS kind of falling back on some of the development timelines, and whether or not you would foresee is this something where NASA will wait it out until we get like the Vulcan Centaurs? Or is this something where we could conceivably have the return mission to the moon be on the back of a SpaceX, like a Super Heavy or something like that?
It will have to be. And what we learned from, so yesterday, NASA announced the winners of the human landing contract. So basically the people that are going to be developing a lunar lander, and they picked 3 companies to continue developing for 10 months. There's a company called Dynetics from Alabama. They proposed a 2-stage lander. There was it's called the National Team, which was led by Blue Origin, but includes others like Lockheed and a few other kind of legacy aerospace companies. They proposed a 3-stage lander, and then SpaceX proposed its 1-stage Starship as a lander. So it's kind of this like, they call it dissimilar redundancy. So basically, if the plan changes, they've got 3 different architectures that they can bring down there. But what's very interesting about this is that each lander was proposed with a different launch vehicle. So SpaceX obviously would use its Super Heavy. The national team, Blue Origin, would use New Glenn, which is a new rocket under development, and Dynetics would be using ULA's Vulcan, as you mentioned, Mike. And the original plan, like, I don't know, a few months ago, was to put a mini space station in orbit, and then the landers would dock with the space station called the Gateway, and then the Orion crew module launched on SLS would meet up with that, transfer your crew, go down to the surface, bada bing, bada boom, you've just landed on the moon. Now it seems like the options are to put the lander in lunar orbit and then have Orion meet up with it. And the reason you have to do that is, I get the sense, and Jim Bridenstine also said this yesterday, they will not be able to human rate another deep space vehicle. There's been so much going into human rating Orion, which started all the way back in OFT1 when I first started covering space. So I don't see anything coming online fast enough to get NASA's stamp of approval. It would be SLS and Orion to get the humans there, to get the astronauts there. But to get all the other critical hardware, even when it was going to be Gateway was going to be launched on commercial rockets anyways. So it's going to be this joint venture of public-private partnerships that's going to get humans to the moon, whether it be 2024 or 2028 or any other date. But that's the plan. Now, whether something else comes online, like maybe SpaceX's Starship does get human rated, could that be a one-stop shop to get humans to the moon after these kind of initial missions? That remains to be seen. Yeah, we're going to have multiple rockets from multiple companies a part of this effort. It's not just going to be you pack everything onto SLS and unpack it, rendezvous in orbit, kind of like the Apollo missions, and then go to the moon. No, they're going to meet up with their lander at the moon, which would be kind of interesting and pretty neat.
Now, of course, you brought up Starship. For those of you who aren't familiar with Starship, the zero of you in this room, I would assume, it's the big honking one that Elon Musk is building out in Texas. Any sense of when we might get a spaceship hop? Like we could get the Starship to hop, not a full orbital burn, but just something where we get to see proof of concept that this is actually a viable platform.
They're shooting for orbital tests of this thing like soon, and years ago I'd just be like, yeah, this is Elon time, but now I'm like, yeah, any day now. I mean, there was a notice to airmen the other day that they were going to be doing a test like within the week or something, and this would be a pretty big hop. Yeah, they're already working on the 5th iteration of this thing. I think it looks like a steampunk nightmare, but it flies. And it's crazy. Like if you go back and watch the water tower video, which was kind of the proof of concept, it's wild. Like I remember watching that live, and I wasn't covering. I don't normally cover these because they're in Texas. But I remember like bringing my wife in the room, like, look, this is literally a tin can that they got to fly up to 150 kilometers and then land it, pinpoint. And years ago, I would kind of discredit SpaceX for kind of taking these crazy steps, but now it's just like, I was not, a lot of people in Twitter world were like, oh my God, they picked Starship to go to the moon. I was like, it's a viable option. They know what they're doing. They're developing so fast. And I mean, just look, I mean, they're about to launch humans, and they've been in business for what, 10 years. So, I mean, I hate to use this, but the sky's the limit for SpaceX. It's just so cool to kind of watch this development happening. So that was kind of a roundabout way to answer your question, Mike. I don't know, but soon. I would say very soon. And in the proposal, they even said that they would have orbital tests before the 10 months. I got to go back and read it, but their orbital tests would have been completed before a critical milestone. That's why SpaceX was picked for this. So
okay, great. All right, well then we made it to the moon. We'll come back a little bit. Before we get into we have all of these cool events. We also have a lot of facilities that within the next few months, the idea is that they will end up going back. Like most of us will end up back in buildings and domes, and then how to work with media to kind of extend our reach. The question I have for you is, what's the mission, the launch, the experience that for you, like when you think about your role at WMFE, you've been a space reporter, you've seen, countless missions at this point. What's the one that stands out for you? Like what's the memorable experience?
OFT1 for sure, because that was my first story and the first time, seeing a launch from Joanne probably knows I was at Space View Park with Ozzy Osband, watching that one, he's kind of like a staple on the Space Coast. If you haven't seen a launch with Ozzy, you have to. That one stands out. And as I mentioned, I think the OSIRIS-REx mission stands out as well, because I really got to know the people that worked on that mission. I got to know the spacecraft. I got to meet the spacecraft, and to see the spacecraft launch, standing shoulder to shoulder with the people that worked on them, was really inspiring. And I seek to tell those stories, like what it's like for the people that have worked on these missions to see these things happen. So being able to experience that emotion in person with them has really stood out. So I've been really lucky to have such a great relationship with Dante Loretta, who is the principal investigator of that mission. And a lot of UCF scientists who we have a really great working relationship with are working on that mission as well. So I have I'll get calls from one of my favorite scientists on there, Umberto Campions. If anything exciting happens, no matter what time it is, he's calling me. So it's like 4:00 in the morning. I'll have a missed call. I'll wake up to that Umberto has something really exciting to tell me about this mission. So just how invested I am in that one, I think is what's been my favorite mission to cover. So
awesome. Well, then we'll go from big and hopeful to something a bit more pragmatic. You of course are oh yeah, Adam, yeah, from so Adam Thans, who currently runs a planetarium in Tennessee, Campions was one of his professors at UF in the 80s.
Oh, cool. So you know how excited he is. I love Umberto. He is so great to work with. So
yeah, and now it's like going
through
the UCF professors and things.
Yeah,
I couldn't unmute, but I just did. Yeah, he was always so excited about everything, and he was young when he started at UF. He was probably in his early 30s or so, and it was a lot of fun. I had a class with him that was, I'm blanking, it's either Uranus or Neptune. That was the class. And this is when nobody knew anything about it, but there was one book that was a collection of articles, professional articles about the planet when it was just, when Voyager went by. That was the class.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun.
My only issue with Umberto is he will come in to tape something, and I have a 28-minute show, and I have a 17-minute segment to fit it in, and I will get an hour and a half of tape from Umberto that I have to condense down. So, but he's a wonderful resource. So thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. I'll let him know next time I see him.
That'd be great.
campaigns is not the guy that you asked to do. Like, you can do an hour presentation special for like our VIPs, and 3 hours later he's just getting to.
He's just getting it done.
It's like you're all excited though, and everybody's on the edge of their seats. So now, as a reporter, of course, your job, tell stories and all that. Planetariums are places where we do exactly that all the time. We tell stories, and one of the challenges that a lot of facilities face is working with local media and doing so in a way that that is beneficial for both sides. In some cases, you might have, I can imagine the museums and the science centers, it can be a little bit difficult if you've got like a marketing crew or handlers that are just trying to do their best but have no clue at all. As a reporter, as somebody who's working with people day in and day out, what sort of tips would you give to planetarium directors and presenters and things on how best to work with local media, how to reach out, what's useful, what's kind of excessive and maybe not as useful, and just like being able to pinpoint what that message should be?
I think thinking like a reporter helps, and that's difficult if you've never really interacted with the media, but think about the story that you want to tell, and think about the story that reporter wants to tell as well. For local news, we're telling the stories of things or events and how they impact our community. So if you're going to pitch a reporter and say, hey, we've got this planetarium show this weekend, you should come and do a story on it, that's really not going to pique my interest. If you say, hey, we're doing this planetary show and we have, it's a bunch of third graders who are from this local school, and they've never done a planetary show before, and we've talked to the teachers, and you can interview the students, and that's going to be more compelling. The more you can give us up front and say, it's just not going to be a talking head in front of a dome saying, come on out to this, but we want to be able to talk to the people that have experienced it. Really, stories are about people's reaction to an event, no matter what the setting is. That's what we're looking for. So to be able to have those sources and all those hurdles in front of us before you reach out to us, that's great. Reporters, especially television news reporters, I know from talking to my colleagues, they are stretched so thin, and sometimes they have to do 2 packages a day. So the more that you can come up to them and say, I've got, this is the event we're doing. Here's 3 people you could interview on camera. I've already got cleared releases with them. I've already cleared the permissions that you would need. We're available between these hours. Come on out. I think that's kind of the best way to get television folks there. And with the industry you folks are in, it is a very visual story. So it would be hard pressed for them to pass on that if you've given them those resources they need, and then say, oh, and here's your B-roll opportunities. We can you turn on the projectors. We can, put some cool images on the dome. You can see some kids walking in. Anything that you can give them to entice them and say, look, this is going to be a really easy turnaround for you. Just come on out. And I think one of the things that frustrates me the most is that folks will pitch this phenomenal idea, and I want to do the story, and then I can't get in touch with you. Like, put your phone number in there, put your email address, make yourself available. I've gotten people that I've wanted to do stories on, and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to be on vacation for a week. So it's like, well, don't pitch me that. I'm going to forget about it in 2 weeks. So be ready for that. Once you send that pitch email or phone call, be ready to do the story that day. Have all your ducks in a row and ready to go. Just because it's so fast, and especially this news cycle that we pivot. And if you can get that interview in the can and be done with it and just have it, that's a wonderful treat for a reporter. So So yeah, if you can make any sense of that advice, look for people, look for the human side of the story. Who does your event affect, and can we talk to them? What opportunities do you have for us to get some B-roll, or in my case, some really cool sound? You know, I remember doing a story at your old planetarium, Mike, and you know, just getting the hum of the projector turning on, or the buzz of the computer exhaust fans, or something like. Because there's not really too much sound. There's not supposed to be, right? But you know, those kind of sound opportunities, and then be available. Be ready for that reporter to say, "Yeah, I want to do the story. I'm coming there this afternoon." Be ready to go. I think that's kind of the best advice I can give to y'all. Hope it's helpful.
Yeah, I can say from personal experience, lasers are about as good a B-roll as you can imagine. Like, they show up well and you don't have to do much to the camera. But speaking of sort of the sounds of an event, Brendan got the short straw on Solar Eclipse Day, and back in 2017, and came to our college for the event. And we won't regale you with the full story. We ended up seeing the 90% of the eclipse, but before that, it was Florida in August, which meant it rained, and for the most part, it's Brendan and I underneath some of these overhangs that are like a foot deep. These two large men trying to fit underneath an overhang, doing an interview on the radio, and looking at and the background noise is a consistent downpour, and people trying to find their way to some sort of shelter. And then at like 2:30, with the humidity at 100%, the clouds start to split, and everybody looks up and they see the eclipse, and it's fantastic. But you know, sort of that at the end of the day, it was even more than the 90% eclipse. It was these people that stayed, and it was sort of the human condition, the ups and the downs of the emotion that people went through, myself included.
And I will say, for that story, that was, everything was lined up beforehand. That was, you know, we had talked, you know, you and your team had pitched the story and said, hey, come out here at this time. Here are the people we can get to you. Here's some students that we've already lined up that you can talk to. And that made that easy. Again, the story changed, and the story was about kind of this crowd waiting anxiously for the clouds to break. But it made it very easy for me to come out there as a reporter, and the other reporters that you had lined up as well for that. So that's kind of a lesson in what to do right.
So we can open it up to questions now. Questions or comments, or just we have a reporter whose brain you can pick. So we'll just kind of open that up. Mike Murray. Mike runs a planetarium in Northern Michigan at Delta College. A tip: get to know your media contacts on a first name basis. Develop a relationship with them. I can tell you, Brendan and I have had more beers together than any other reporter that I've had beers with. But yeah, I mean, you know, Brendan could probably list 50 of your colleagues right off the top of your head and go, okay, all of these people would be fantastic to know and fantastic to
yeah, you drink a lot of beers in this biz. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. When all of the new space reporters are 29 and their livers still work, it's that'll do it.
And it's a really good point, Mike. And also, I think you can also, once you establish those relationships, just kind of come out and say, hey, you know, we are a planetarium, but we're experts at, you know, this. There is this meteor shower happening. There's this asteroid flyby. There's, you know, this really cool thing that's happening in the night sky. It's our job, you know, to explain it to our audience. We can explain it to your TV audience. You know, don't forget about us. For a lot of the, you know, astronomical events, it was either Mike or Derek at Seminole State who would come on, and we would talk about it and do these fun little segments and stuff. Yeah, so that's really good advice, Mike.
If I can just interject one real quick story, because I worked in Orlando at the Orlando Science Center back in its pre-modern days. And I don't know, way back in '88, there was a perihelic opposition of Mars, and we had 3,000 people show up at Lock Haven Park.
Oh, wow.
And so I was bouncing between all three of the television networks, and we were having so much fun because we wanted it to be fun and entertaining and lively and funny. And so to be able to put that side into it too really helped. And that's why having those personal relationships was so great.
Mike, when did you leave John Young?
I left there in 1990.
Okay.
I know,
Yeah.
I'm an old fogey, I know.
But no, when you mentioned Lock Haven Park, those are the sorts of things that, like, as a kid, were formative experiences for me wanting to get into astronomy or wanting to, eventually be okay with working in a planetarium. Was like, I think it was 90, would have been 94, would have been Shoemaker Levy 9. And they filled up Lock Haven Park, and Lock Haven Park is just north of downtown Orlando. It was light polluted in the 90s, and it's worse now. But the idea of having 3,000 or 4,000 people out there with telescopes, and I think it was the first time I ever saw video astronomy. And somebody, like, they had brought out this 13-inch CRT, and sat it in the middle of the field, and then you'd look and, like, that's a scar on the atmosphere of Jupiter. It's incredible. And so, yeah, and then you'd have your media, your reporters, things that go around and would feel comfortable in your settings to approach anyone. That this is really a place where we can do some really great work.
And Brendan, you
Patty,
mentioned having something already prepared and available. And for instance, even during a star party, we had a number of people with video cameras on their telescopes, and they could say, here, plug this into your camera and show people live what Mars is looking like right now. And so that was a big plus.
all right, Patty, we're going to let you go.
Yeah, I have a question for you, Brendan, because I'm part of a public school system. So I can appreciate what you said about needing to have the permissions laid up. The problem I have is I've got about 17 layers of permission that I have to go through before I'm even allowed to talk to the media. So I can't put out a pitch because I'm not allowed to. And if a reporter comes to, just shows up at a planetarium program, I can't be prepared because I can't, I can have, maybe I could have some press releases right there and have the people sign them. But do you have any advice on how I can work through, or how you've worked with school system media departments? Because I would have to go to them first and then reach out. So is there any tips that you might have first?
Yeah, that's a tough one to navigate. And I know how difficult that is. I think that's where having that personal relationship helps, because you don't need to go through your 17 layers of approval, get the press release out, and by the time it's in the reporter's hand, the event is already, long gone by the time you've gotten the approval. You can say something to, a lot of the reporters, we've worked with the schools, and we know the PAOs probably better than you do because we work with them on a daily basis. So if you've got that personal relationship with the reporter, you can say, hey, here's this event coming up. I'd love for some coverage. That reporter can then say, well, let me go talk to Jane Smith. I know her in the office, and we'll just fast track this because she owes me a favor or something like that. We have our networks that we work to. So if you have that relationship with the reporter, you can kind of back channel into it, right? And then let them do the hard work in trying, because it's our job to pester these PAOs. That's why we were put on this earth, is to give them a hard time. So let us do that. Let us get in trouble and push for the things that we want, and kind of not let you do it. But to make those relationships is difficult, right? You've got to meet the reporter. You have to find the reporter. And a lot of times, like I've met a lot of folks in the industry that I've turned into sources from, like public events that I've been at. So if I'm giving a talk, if I'm doing, moderating a panel, I'll have a lot of people come up and say, hey, I'm, a teacher at this school. I'd love to do something. And that's kind of how these relationships have built. There was actually one person that came to my event that said, hey, next week we've got some amateur radio guys coming here and the kids are going to talk to the space station. And I was like, that's a really cool story. So I was like, hold on, I'll call your principal and all that. And I did it all from the back end, and was able to turn around that story real quick. And it's one of my favorite stories that I did, is like hearing these kids talk to an astronaut on the space station. And that was because someone came to my event, told me about it, and I did all of the reporter work on the other end. They didn't have to worry about it. So so that's a really, really good question, Patty. Hope my answer helped a little bit.
It does. And you can come move to Prince George's County, Maryland, and then I'll have somebody already.
I'm trying to think my public radio people up there. Let me go through my Rolodex and see if I can find someone up there.
I'll take you up on that.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, we got a question from the chat, and then we're going to go to Anna after that. For Mark Webb, exclusivity of story or blanket PR releases? Which one? What would you say is best or better?
That's a good question, because we don't have that kind of we had it first mentality at my shop, so I could care less about exclusivity. I know that, yeah, you might break the story before me, but I'm going to tell it better. That's kind of my my thing. I think you would get, you might be hard pressed to sell an exclusive story in this realm. I think your best bet is to just kind of cultivate those relationships. If you don't have those relationships, blanket press release. And, if you do get someone that's going to pick up the story, then ping the other company and say, hey, listen, the ABC affiliate's doing this. We're going to have this available if you want to come out. They're going to be doing the story. You probably want it too, right? So you get them to work against each other there. But I think it'd be difficult to sell an exclusive story in this particular realm. So yeah, I think your best chance is to kind of reach out to as many people as you can.
All right, Anna, go ahead.
Hi, sorry. So I have a diplomacy question.
Okay.
At my last planetarium, there was an older gentleman reporter who was notorious for coming and interviewing one of us there and taking everything that we said and saying it himself and just taking like a tiny little soundbite from us, which we were all used to. Lots of reporters do that, fine, whatever. But the time that really ground my gears, I guess, is right after the Falcon Heavy launch. We had streamed it. I had just been down to Florida and been taken out to the pad to see it before it launched. And so he came and interviewed me, asked me all these questions. I gave him all these things, gave him this really long interview that obviously was going to get cut down. And when it aired that night, he said most of what I had said. And then he had also gone and interviewed some random businessman who was a fan of space, who said the other chunk of what I had said. And the only soundbite he had of me was, "It's exciting."
Mm-hmm.
And our marketing department was like, well, that's crap. They should have, what about, pushing for women in science? Like, why would you, and especially to go talk to somebody who's not an expert on it, why would you do that? But they also didn't want to go do anything about it or say anything, because then you destroy that relationship potentially with that outlet.
Mm-hmm.
So in a situation like that, where it's been an issue with the reporter, and in my case, I feel like that was a pretty sexist move on his part, personally. Mm-hmm. How do you go about rectifying that without wrecking the relationship with that particular news outlet?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. There are some really crappy reporters out there. But what I would do in that situation, or suggest for you to do in that situation, is find that reporter's news director and reach out directly to them, because that's a reflection on him or her who is in charge of this stuff, who is doing the edits on these things. And that news director might not even have known that you said anything else during that piece. She or he is just looking at, whatever bites he's thrown in the script. Yeah, and I would reach out to the news director and say, hey, listen, this has been something that's happened with this particular person before. We're uncomfortable working with him, and, we think you're missing a story opportunity here. We could talk about women in science and get more people. Just if you say the D word, say diversity, get diversity of sources on your air. That is something that news organizations have been struggling with before. And if this news director knows that, he had a diverse source that he could have used for this story and didn't, and decided to just use this, other person who's not qualified, they'll be pretty upset. So I would go to the news director or station manager if you can, and you can normally find their contact information pretty readily available, and hopefully that rectifies it. And I mean, I would even call him out on it. Next time he comes to interview, just say, how much of this are you going to use? Are you going to use the good stuff, or are you just going to use my 3-second soundbite again? And that's how I'm going to answer your questions from now on. Just kind of give it back to him, which is easier said than done. but I think you'll get more from reaching out to his news director.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very scared when someone calls my news director because I know I did something wrong and something's going to change. So because I know my news director would take that very seriously. So.
All right, Paulette, go ahead.
So at the Science Center, for the most part, we send out blanket press releases, and it seems to work really well. And then we go and we tag our individual contacts that we have. And I have found that in general, finding the people who are reporting the news in your area that like space are the ones to go after. So our local NPR affiliate, one of the guys who's there loves space. And so after I told him I'm a space expert, he comes to me for basically everything that we do.
Yeah, that's a good thing. And I think that's really important, not just in this sphere, but to know what the reporter you're reaching out to covers. Go look at their last 10 stories they posted on the website. Go look back. That's a really good suggestion, Paulette, and that's how I get most of my pitches. Is people, they don't send. We have an email for press releases, and they'll just send it directly to me and say, "Hey, I know you cover this. Would you be interested in seeing this?" And because I'm going to be honest, I don't go through the press release folder. It's hundreds and hundreds of emails come in a day. I have a very specific beat. I've got enough sources now where I know if a story is going to happen, they're going to reach out to me. So yeah, that is a very good tip, Paulette, is to find out who, and they don't have to just cover space. They just have to kind of like it, and pitch to them. Mike will know. Greg Pallone, he's a general assignment reporter who happens to be on the Space Coast and loves everything space. So it's very easy to just reach out to Greg and say, "Hey, I know you cover space. You want to do this story?" And he'll probably say, "Yes, I'll do it." So very, very good tip, Paulette.
Great. All right. So if we have any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, because we did want to get one thing from Brendan. There are 2 pets in the house right now, but there's one really important one. Can we meet Cassie?
Yeah, sure. Cassie?
Cassie is important because her namesake is in fact
Cassie.
the Cassini space probe. So, and she is a darling.
I think she's sleeping.
Oh, okay. Well,
Oh, here she comes. Cassie, come here. You want to meet some people? Come here. It is her gotcha day today too. So there she is. Cassie, say hi to everybody that I'm talking to. She does not get video chats at all. We've been chatting with like my family. We're like, "Look, Cassie Collins here," and she's like at the door looking. Like, no, he's on TV. So yeah, that's Cassie. She's named after Cassini. And
she is one of the sweetest dogs I think I've ever met in my entire life. She's wonderful. Great. All right. Any more questions for Brendan while we have him officially? And of course, Brendan, you're welcome to stay for long German words and other things. Does anybody else have a dog they want to share? Like, no.
Dog name, because there needs to be a dog named Osiris Rex.
Yeah, I don't think I'm allowed to adopt anymore, but
I have a dog named Root Beer, but he's outside. So.
Yeah, I'm still really, really jealous at Joanne for that weather. That's ridiculous.
It's gorgeous down here. It's unseasonably awesome right now. So
see, yeah. That's why I'm surprised I haven't gotten the text from my parents who live in Orlando of how fantastic it is and how it's not up here.
I've got Tank here. This is my
dog. A dog. You're missing a dog.
Yes.
There's another dog on here. She still doesn't get it.
All right. I'm going back up the chat, make sure we didn't miss anything. Yeah, but if there aren't any other questions, Brendan, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Really was a pleasure, and always good to see a familiar face. So if you have any more questions for Brendan or you want to reach out to them, we'll make sure that we have some contact information.
Yes, please share my contact, and yeah, I'd be more than happy to reach out and help you all with any questions you have, or if you want to talk offline about things. More than happy to chat. So thank you for the invite, Mike. It was great speaking with all of you. It was really fun.
Great. Well, thanks again, Brendan. And then the silent clap of it all. So of course that puts us right on time to move into our next segment. You all know it well. It is Long German Words of the Week. So without further ado, in a very special version of Long German Words of the Week, Anna Green.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, so you don't have to listen to me try and pronounce the German words this week with my American accent. You get to actually hear a real German say them, which is why we have some extra fun ones this week, because they're ones that I don't want to try to say. So with that, Michael, could you, well, I guess actually I could get Brian in the camera there.
Hi.
So this is Brian, and he will be saying the words for us this week. And yeah, if we could get word number 1, please, Michael.
Word number 1.
All right, so.
Jetzt das erste Wort.
Ja.
Helligkeitsschwankungen.
Noch einmal.
Helligkeitsschwankungen.
So, is that fluctuations in brightness or brightly colored clothes?
All right, Anna, we are right about, I think we've got almost everybody voted in. Right now, it looks like fluctuations in brightness is at 58%, brightly colored clothes at 42%. What is our correct answer?
Helligkeit is brightness, and Schwankungen is fluctuations. So it is fluctuations in brightness. Pulled directly from an astronomy article here in Germany this week. So
very nice, very nice. All right.
All right. So could we get word number 2, please?
Here we go.
Beobachtungshinweise. Beobachtungshinweise.
So is that attention to detail or observation notes?
Who would have ever thought that a one-off stupid idea like this would be so fantastic? I mean, really.
Mr. Fudds.
Okay, we've got all but 3 votes in. We are right now 50-50. Oh, okay. We've got one pulling ahead. It's going to be just about half and half between attention to detail and observation notes. Anna, what's our correct answer?
So Beobachtung is observation, and Hinweise, in this case, is notes. It can also mean hint, reference, detail, cue, or information, depending on how it's used. So this would be observation notes. Again, taken from that same astronomy article. It was rich in vocabulary. All right, and I'm very excited about this last word. If you could bring that up, please, Michael.
Do be aware that the standard window is not wide enough. You will need to expand the window to see this. Here we go.
Rindfleisch-Etikettierungsüberwachungsaufgabenübertragungsgesetz. Rindfleisch-Etikettierungsüberwachungsaufgabenübertragungsgesetz.
So is that the law for the delegation of beef label monitoring, or is that the law for fair assignment of public workers to a specific district office?
Just so that everyone knows, this is 63 letters long.
This is the one
it is not, in fact, the longest word in German. Officially.
There is one that's longer.
Mm-hmm.
That one isn't as much of a tongue twister. So that one will come about later. At some point. whether I do it or Brian does it, if I can convince him to come back and say more words.
All right, we're about 90% in. It's clear that one is in the lead. Right now with about 30% the law for the delegation of beef label monitoring, and about 70% say the law for fair assignment of public workers to a specific district office. Anna, what is our correct answer?
So Rindfleisch is beef. Etikettierung is etiquette. Überwachung is monitoring. And then Aufgaben is task. And Übertragung is like a broadcast or transfer or assignment. And then Gesetz is a law or an act. So it is the law for the delegation of beef label monitoring.
There we go.
Good job, Patty. Sorry, Adam.
All right,
So,
and then for
those
everyone
were
that asked.
your long German words of the week. And special thank you to Brian.
Clapping in German. Clapping in German. And
That's
so
table knocking. You knock on the table in Germany.
well, nobody can see the tables. So what we'll make sure is that Anna will be putting those in the chat so you can see those words again, sort of for future reference, if you want to use this as a party trick, using extremely long German words. So thank you all for playing the long German words of the week. All right. So next up today is our first new segment. So we're going to turn this over to Jackie Baughman from Buffalo, New York, the Williamsville Space Center, Space Lab Planetarium, I believe. I'll try to do that off the top of my head. Yes, got it. Jackie, of course, is an artist. We'll call her an expert in Illustrator and Photoshop. And this is, it's not a full segment necessarily. This is more of a teaser of some of the tutorials that I know we've been asked to put together. And almost certainly Jackie is going to be our main conduit for that. So without further ado, Jackie, we'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I was going to try my best to make this sound like one of those PBS art segments, but I just couldn't think of anything. So it just sounded creepy and weird. So I'm just not going to even try. For today, I'm going to mainly do an overview of what I could possibly show you. Like, there is so many things that I was going to tell you in just one little simple tutorial, and it would take way longer than 10 minutes. So mainly right now, I'm just going to do a very brief overview, show you how I make one thing, and show you some examples of what I've used before. And so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to mainly share Illustrator right now, and then I will, give you examples of what I've used Illustrator for. So we have my desktop right now. Can everyone see it? I'm just going to assume. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so we have my desktop right now, and I'm just going to, I have already had the file open because I didn't want you to see my cluttered desktop. So have everything started up, and I'm going to bring in a file. Well, first, before I get started, the reason why I like to use Illustrator is because these files you can make very clean, and you mainly can do nice clean diagrams and logos, and it's you don't have to worry about pixels, and you can, it's cleaner, and it's nicer, and frankly, I feel like vector programs are a little bit easier to grasp, especially like just trying to remember when I first learned digital programs however long ago. But I will be giving little short tutorials on how all the different things work and how you can do a little bit of everything. So here's the desktop, and okay, I'm gonna get ahead of myself. So first I want to bring in a screenshot of something I took in Stellarium. And so you can just drag and drop, or you can place things. And so I thought it would be the easiest to show you guys how to make your own custom star charts. And there's a ton of different things you could do. And since Venus is very prominent out in at sunset, or Jupiter and Mars are prominent at sunrise. You could also do like little segments of where the moon is in comparison to these planets, whatever you could do, whatever you want to do, especially since we're all making our own content right now. So you can change the artboards around. See, I'm gonna get all of this extra stuff out of the way. I'm gonna change some stuff around, and I'm just gonna try not taking up too much of your guys' time, and just move this around really quickly. So we have our screenshot, and I'm gonna lock that layer, move a bunch of this extra stuff out of the way, and I'm gonna zoom in. So a lot of these tools, you can just do whatever, you can create lines, and so I'm going to quickly try to get through this so that you guys just don't have to see everything that I'm doing and I'm just rambling, because I usually just do all this without talking. So I'm just going to trace out the Big Dipper real quick, and then I'm going to trace out the Little Dipper. Okay, so I have the two dippers traced out, and that's great and all, but what if we want to put stars? So we can put stars on there, and you can pick whatever size stars you want. So I'm going to stay with a 5-pointed star, and then I'm going to pick a different color because the default is white, so I don't want white stars. So feel free to ask questions or anything, because it's making me slow down a lot by trying to fill the space. I am an introvert, but I don't like dead quiet. And usually when I'm giving presentations in the planetarium, I say lots of really silly puns just so I can hear people laughing, so I know they're not all dead or asleep. So I'm a professional, just so you know.
Jackie, is that a simple, just like Control C, Control V, like in
Yes,
Word?
I am doing some key commands, so it's a lot faster, but you can do Control C, Control V, or Control Shift B, and that will place it behind or in front. Of course, it didn't do it. Okay, it placed it completely behind it. So I know what I'm talking about. Control C, Control Shift B, and it placed it behind. No, it didn't. Okay, just assume that I know what I'm talking about. But up here, you also have objects where you can paste in front, paste in back. Oh, it's because I was holding down Shift. It's only because I'm talking. That's why it doesn't sound like I'm doing things correctly. So we have our dippers, and then I'm going to hide that, and that looks really cool, but then that's not the right color because all artboards are white. So I'm going to change that to a different color so it looks better. So we have our two dippers. I'm gonna move this over here, and it'd be really cool if we could have the two pointer stars point out the Little Dipper, or the North Star. So we're gonna just do this real quick. And then I'm gonna make a dotted line. Lines, arrowhead, that. Of course, it points in the wrong direction, but what's great is I can just switch it around. And why don't we pick a different color for that? Okay, so we have that, and it doesn't look great on white. So let's do a different background color. It only has orange just because that was the last previous color I grabbed. And in the back, pick blue. No, it looks horrible. Black. Hey, that's a great idea. Okay, so we have a quick diagram that, took me a little bit longer because I was trying to talk at the same time. But these diagrams don't really take too long. And, so mainly what I want to do is just like do an overview of what each of these little tools can do and what Illustrator how you can utilize Illustrator for your planetariums and for your online content. You can make your own star charts. You could make your own diagrams, do moon phases, whatever you can dream, you can make it. So I think I have a few minutes. So if anybody wants to, feel free to ask me any questions, please do that. I do have, if you'd rather, I could show you some of the things I have made before for my previous planetariums. Would you rather do that? Okay. Let me I'm going to stop sharing so I can bring up some of my. Do I want to do that?
Yeah, so while Jackie is searching, one of the things that really is useful here when you're able to make your own charts and customize your own diagrams is that if say 100 planetariums are using the same thing, it can sort of it all becomes noise after a while. While if you have something that's very particular to your own site, something that's very unique that you've created, there's a lot more sense of like that's going to pop in somebody's Facebook feed or in Twitter or on Instagram, that you're building precisely what you want and not have to have any additional information or have it look a little different. You can make it exactly the way that you'd like.
Okay, so I have this diagram. Can you all see that? Okay, so when I was in one of my design classes for InDesign, we had to make a booklet, and this was when I first started the planetarium. So I'm like, I'm going to make how to do intro space stuff, how to begin stargazing. So I made a bunch of different diagrams of constellations, and I did them out of Illustrator. And I haven't looked at these in a long time, so they're really pretty, and I think I might reuse them somehow. But that was one. Let's see. My planetarium that I used to work at, we used to show off the winter G, which everyone talks about the winter circle, the winter octagon. We always talked about the winter G. And so we had this really terribly drawn chart, and it was hand drawn, and it was scanned a gazillion times and copied a gazillion times, and it looked terrible. So I cleaned it up and I made it look pretty. And a lot of it was based off of the Abrams star charts because we used to hand those out as well. And so I made this all in Illustrator, and we handed out a gazillion of them. So you can do layout too, like you can in InDesign. You can do page layout in Illustrator. It takes a little bit longer, but a lot of this stuff is starting to get into the realm of too complex if you are not an artist and you don't have the mindset of how design and layout should be. So it's like, so you can do some stuff on your own, but then you are starting to get to the point where you might need a little bit more technical help with layout, if that makes sense. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Jackie, it doesn't look like we do. There was an increase, like what a good free alternative to Illustrator is. And I know we've mentioned Inkspace and Affinity before.
Inkscape.
Inkscape or Inkspace?
Inkscape. I don't know Inkscape very well, but I'm trying to make myself learn some of the things about it so I can just rattle that off. Last time I did the hospitality suite with Photoshop, I thankfully had Waylena in the room so she could translate GIMP for me for people who are using GIMP. So I'm going to try to brush up on Inkscape stuff and free alternative things so that you could also use the same tips that I'm using and the same tools and see how difficult it is to try to translate all that for you.
Great. Well, thank you, Jackie. And what we're looking to do in the future when we're kind of getting some feedback from the previous e-conferences and what everybody's been asking for, we'll probably be having a few more of these tutorials. In some cases, it may be a very beginning tutorial, just how to use Illustrator Photoshop. Some of them may though require a little bit more proficiency. So your ability to get around the software themselves before we delve into something that's a little bit higher on the learning curve. But thank you, Jackie, and we'll have a few more of those going forward, and sort of as we come up with, again, new ways to create content, things that allow you and your facility to stand out. So now we'll turn it over to Mary Holt. It is Pandemic Primo Podcast Party for your Planetarian. Woo! Mary Holt, Cal Academy of Sciences, brought to you by.
A soundboard this week, Michael.
Oh no, maybe next week. Maybe next week.
Anyway,
and of course, this is PPPP for your P.
PFP, yes.
Brought to you by.
Yes. So today's episode, welcome everyone to what is this? The fourth? I'm losing track.
Okay, I thought that was me. I think we may have lost Mary. Well, in the meantime, okay. So everybody's still here except for Mary. In that case, we can switch things around. It's fine. We'll just jump to open forum and get back to Mary when she's back in the room. So open forum, now Mary Holt is back in the room. So you should probably be patient.
Sorry, guys. I don't know what's up with the laptop today, but it is just dropping internet for me. So anyway, we'll just have to go without my slides. So I apologize. What was the last thing you saw? What?
It was just your welcome slide. Your welcome slide.
Got it. Okay. So sorry about that. We're on, I think it's episode 4 or something. I'm losing track of what episode we're on, but welcome again to PFP. My name is Mary Holt. I'm your host. And today's episode is brought to you by Are We There Yet? The podcast from our wonderful host at the beginning of today's e-conference. So you should check that out. We mentioned it a couple of times, but all about space exploration. But today's episode is also brought to you by the fact that we're about to go into the weekend and we're all stuck at home. So we have time to watch television. So today's theme is all about podcasts to listen to while you're binge watching television shows. And of course, this episode is, as always, is brought to you by Squarespace. But the first podcast I had to recommend is the first podcast that went along with a TV show that I personally listened to. It's called Gilmore Guys. It's a wonderful podcast by 2 sweet, young, 25-year-old boys who are often very annoying and infuriating, but also delightful and endearing. Kevin T. Porter and Demi Adijuibe. And they go episode by episode watching Gilmore Girls and talking about it, and usually having a wonderful guest on as well. Jason Mantzoukas is a frequent guest on that podcast, and he's delightful. He's my favorite. So that's a good place to start. Just make sure that you're ready to be patient because they were new to podcasts at the time, and some of the episodes are about 2 hours long, which is unreasonable in my opinion. But that is where I started with this kind of genre of podcasts. Another one that I just started just a few days ago that I highly recommend, it's wonderful, is Insecurity. That is Insecure, ITEA, to go along with the TV show Insecure, which is on HBO. And that's another episode by episode. They talk about the show. And in the second season, they also have a couple guests on that are actors on the show itself. So that's pretty cool as well. And then another one I also recently started that is hosted by people that were on the show that they're talking about is Office Ladies, where Angela Kinsey and Jenna Fisher talk episode by episode about The Office. Now, the other recommendations I have, I will give a caveat that, you know, each of these podcasts take a while to get through since you're watching an entire series of a television show and listening to an episode of a podcast for each television episode. So it takes a while to get through them. So I have not listened to the rest of these, but I have gotten them highly recommended from other people. So a few more options are Treks and the City, which is all about Star Trek and is hosted by Veronica Osorio and Alice Wetterland. Alice Wetterland is another frequent guest on Gilmore Guys as well, which is part of why I know about this one. The West Wing Weekly, which is pretty self-explanatory, following the West Wing. And that one of the hosts for that is Rishi Tirway, who is also the host of Song Exploder, which is still a podcast I need to talk to you all about, but haven't gotten a theme for it yet, but it is wonderful. And a few others that I have had recommended to me as well, or just found out about yesterday. And a couple of these are not strictly TV. They may be about like movies or books. Jackie actually just told me about Harry Potter and the Sacred Text yesterday, which is where they read each chapter of Harry Potter as if it's like a sacred text, basically. So that sounds amazing. I want to check that out. Also, there's a Here to Make Friends, which is a bachelorette podcast. There is Buffering the Vampire Slayer, which is all about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Go Bayside, if you want to watch Saved by the Bell. And How Did This Get Made? I've heard a lot about, but haven't listened to yet, but they watch ridiculously horrible movies and laugh at them and talk about how is this even possible? And also features Jason Mantzoukas, my favorite person in the world. So those are my recommendations for this week as you go into your weekend. And if you feel like binging some TV or watching some movies, so there you go. Thank you all for joining me again for PPP PFP.
Thank you again, Mary. If you're following along, just trying to yell at everyone, because I can't do italics. That's why. What's going on in there, you can read and stuff. I lost my words, I guess, at this point. So thank you, Mary. Now we move on to saying goodbye to Jeff Holt. That's the next thing we got to do. So bye, Jeff Holt. And then after that, open forum. So if anybody has anything that they'd like to talk about, that they'd like to bring up, just continue. This is like also a good time when you can ask for feature revisions. Like, hey, what do you want to see next? Always a good time here in open forum. So kind of let it be open. Anybody? Go ahead. No one has anything to say. Wonderful. Somebody has something to say. Okay.
So next.
Of course, it's Paulette.
Next week we plan on doing a Star Wars themed Facebook Live like science demos. So if anybody has any ideas for science demos that might go along with Star Wars, please let me know. We are trying to pull some things together for May the 4th, of course. And we've already got the idea for the static electricity, levitation, magnetic levitation, and I forget what the other one was, but we're working on that program right now so that we can do on Monday. If anyone has any ideas, let me know or type them in the chat. Thank you.
That brings up an important point. Mark Webb, would we like to do a special edition virtual hospitality suite on either May the 4th or Cinco de Mayo?
Let's see. We could do that. May 4th is a Monday. Cinco de Mayo is a Tuesday.
Could always Revenge of the 6th.
Yeah, we could do a May the 4th. want to do a Star Wars themed, or on May the 4th, we could switch it around and do a Star Trek theme.
I think that would be blasphemous if you did that.
That's why I said it. Okay, we'll stick to Star Wars. I'm not a huge fan of all of the Star Wars. I like some of it, let's get that going, and I'll get that up later today.
Yeah, let's just convene the Jedi Council and figure out what we're going to do there.
Okay,
that's probably a good idea. Okay, excellent. So
okay.
We may or may not be doing a special edition next week. If it's Cinco de Mayo, everybody just come plastered. Just show up plastered. It's what we're trying to do. Any e-conference, come plastered if it's okay. If you're working at home, it's fine. We'll edit that out of the YouTube. Anything else for open forum? All right. Well, then we will move into kind of it's Friday. They do not, in fact, celebrate Cinco de Mayo in Mexico. What day is it in Mexico? It's May 5th.
They do in Puebla.
In some, well, look, we've Americanized the hell out of these days anyway. So May the 4th it is. All right. So best parts, it's Friday. Let's go into the weekend feeling pretty good. Mary Holt, you put your hand up immediately. Mary, what is your best part of the week?
I wanted to get in there quickly because the piggies are being active, but you may all recall from, I don't know how long ago, because time is just a concept, but that I was talking about one of my best parts, that I was waiting to get guinea pigs, and they are now here, and they're running around and chowing down on some food. So that's been the best part of my week, is just having them next to me while I work and stuff, and squeaking and running around and knocking over their food.
Adorable. Adam Fans.
Yes. Actually, it's been something good that's happened over the last few weeks, and it's continuing for at least a couple more weeks, if not more. I don't know if any of you like live stage performance, plays, musicals. I hope you do. There's a number of them that have been released free that are either weekly or every other week from different theaters and on YouTube. So you can watch them anytime. I'll just briefly list the ones that we're looking into. One is Shakespeare's Globe Theater. The Globe Theater, where they have the recreation of the Globe Theater, and they do all Shakespeare plays, and they look like excellent productions. Those are released every 2 weeks on a Monday at 2 p.m. So just look up Globe Theater, you'll find it. I think right now is Romeo and Juliet. There's also the National Theater at home. The National Theater, also in England, every week at Thursday at 2 p.m. A play is released, and it's available for a week. Let's see. Yesterday they released Frankenstein with Benedict Cumberbatch, however you say his name, as the monster tonight, and that'll be available for a week. And then tonight, the person who played Dr. Frankenstein will be the monster, and Benedict will be the doctor. So it's the same play, but with those two actors trading roles, which should be quite interesting. They're free, but they're only available for a week, so you want to watch them. And my third and final is The Shows Must Go On, and that's every Friday at 2 p.m., but they are only available for 2 days, for 48 hours, and it's I'm blanking on his name. Andrew Lloyd, Robin's yelling at me the answer. Andrew Lloyd Webber's plays and musicals. So they just did a 25th anniversary of the Phantom of the Opera, which was excellent. And tonight today they're releasing a 50th birthday celebration. So these are actual productions all of these are actually productions that are available on DVD or to stream, but are being available for live. So I just thought I'd throw it out there. So Shakespeare's Globe Theater, National Theater at Home, the shows must go on out there for you to enjoy.
Well, thank you, Adam, for helping keep us cultured, which is extremely important in this trying time. Anna Green.
So this week, the wonderful person who replaced me at the McDonald Planetarium in St. Louis, Will Snyder, he invited myself, John Lakey, who was my predecessor and mentor, Bill Kelly, who moved on to Chicago, and Allie Vance, who went on to Arizona, all to join the McDonald Planetarium happy hour that they had. And they had it early enough so that John and I didn't have to stay up super late. And we had a 4-hour happy hour. And I have been living off of that for the whole week. It was really, really wonderful. I didn't realize how much I missed all of them.
Thanks, Anna. Eric Briggs.
Yeah, I convinced a YouTuber from Italy this week that his video that was labeled Comet Atlas was actually Venus. And he thanked me, and he did not get annoyed. And so that was the best part of my week.
Paulette.
I got to celebrate my dog's Gotcha Day on Monday, and we went for an 8-mile walk.
Yeah.
Hi, I got access to the planetarium, and then I brought the telescope to my place. So I took a beautiful photograph from Sombrero Galaxy. But the best part of the week is that this model here, I just finished that modeling our planetarium. And today, in 1 hour and 12 minutes, we are going to launch our virtual tour to the planetarium.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, Patty, go ahead.
My best part of the week was my daughter's school is doing a little contest where they are encouraging you to take like a piece of famous art and trying to recreate it at home. Now, we had a really nice day, probably rivaling the one that's down in Florida right now on Wednesday. So Trix and I went in the woods, took some of my dresses. I got to play dress up with her and take photographs of her. They're fabulous. So that was the best part of my week, except she will not let me enter them into the contest because she doesn't want them to be seen by her classmates. But it was really fun because the experience was the best part of it. And they really turned out pretty good. Too bad I can't share them. Just take my word for it as a very unbiased mother.
All right. Any other best parts for this week? Looking. All right. Well, this is usually the case at our e-conferences. We are incredibly efficient. It is 1:50, which means we are done for this week. Thank you all for coming out and attending again. Next week, we've got a single e-conference on Wednesday. That is May 6th, I believe. I'm going to double check right now. It is, in fact, May 6th, and that's going to be a special event as well. It is Introduction to Open Space with Dan Tell from the California Academy of Sciences, and then our standard rundown of all of those cool kids, Record Shop, Long German Words, podcasts. We've got it all on Wednesday. It should be a really good time. But remember, that's Open Space next week. Week following, we've got a few other things planned. And at some point in the near future, we'll get a few more of the tutorials in place. And one thing that we're really going to try to put together is how to do a home studio on a shoestring budget. So if you want to like up your content game. How do we do this with a minimum budget, medium-sized budget, and then, you know, work gave you a credit card? So those are the tiers, and we'll kind of build something like that so that you can really up the production values at home. But until then, everybody gets unmuted. Have a wonderful rest of the Friday. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week.
Woohoo!
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.